Okay, so we all correct each other. We correct ourselves, we correct other people, and there's a word I want you to pay attention to in your emotional intelligence and your critical thinking, and that's the word actually. Actually, that's not what happened. Actually, the meeting is Thursday. Actually, I already told you that. Actually, Mom, that's not what I said. It seems harmless, and sometimes it is. But depending on our tone and what comes after, actually can make a correction sound collaborative, or it can make someone feel so small and they're being told they're an idiot. So I found some great research about the way we use the word actually, and it got me thinking about something real big. We correct people all day long. We do. We correct coworkers, employees, spouses, children, partners, parents, and friends. And when we correct somebody, we're rarely communicating only that corrected information. We're communicating something about the relationship at the same time. Bear with me, hear me out. This is high level emotional intelligence. Linguists study actually as something called a discourse marker. A discourse marker, okay. It can signal that what we're about to say is different from what somebody else just said, and depending upon where we put it, how we say it and what follows it can sometimes soften disagreement. I actually have a different number. Can land very differently from actually you're wrong. You're following my line of logic, right? Same word, completely different communication. That's because we aren't simply processing our words, we're processing tone, facial expression, timing, status, and history. And I'm just looking like, oh my gosh, my makeup is messed up. Nah, don't mind me. Let me just do that real quick. Okay. At work, there may be a power difference involved. At home, there may be 20 or 30 years of family history involved. It's rarely about what we're talking about in the moment. Your partner may not simply be reacting to the sentence you said today. They may be reacting to the fact that you corrected them exactly that way hundreds, if not thousands of times, right? So I got 3 things that I want you to practice, and more importantly, 3 things I want you to say instead, okay? All right, the first, this is a biggie. Decide whether the correction matters before you even make it. Does it even matter? We correct each other over the tiniest things. Your coworker says the client called Tuesday. You know it was Wednesday. Your partner says you went to Florida in March, and you know it was January. Your mother says somebody was wearing a green dress. You remember it being pink. Your colleague is telling a story and gets some insignificant detail wrong, and before they even finish, we jump in and correct them. Sometimes accuracy is so important, and it absolutely matters. If somebody has the wrong financial information, a decision is being made from wrong information, speak up. If somebody has the wrong deadline, correct that for sure. You with me, right? If the information affects safety, money, reputation, or an important outcome, we need accurate information. And it might even be as simple as like I burned my hand making bacon last week, Saturday. That's been 9 days now. I had second degree burns. It was really bad. I might have said Friday. And if my husband corrected me that was Friday instead of Saturday, I feel devalued and not seen and heard. Sometimes being right accomplishes absolutely frickin' nothing. If your partner says you went to Florida in March and you know it was February, maybe March can just be there like that. There can be a relational cost to constantly correcting people. Eventually, somebody can begin to feel like they can't tell a story around you, and they're going to clam up and they're not going to share around you. This happens in families, and it absolutely happens at work. Think about an employee whose manager constantly corrects the littlest details during meetings. The employee says something, the manager adjusts it, the employee explains an idea, the manager or the boss corrects it, the employee tells a story, the manager interrupts to make it more precise. And the manager may think, I'm simply making sure you're accurate, and the employee may experience, nothing I say is right. Got it? Okay. So when you feel yourself about to jump in with, actually, that happened Wednesday, stop for half a second and say this instead. Nothing. Seriously, say nothing. Who frickin' cares? Sometimes saying nothing is the better communication choice. Let the story continue. Let the insignificant detail go. Let somebody be wrong. It absolutely changes nothing. This is emotional maturity. This is critical thinking in action. This is emotional intelligence. The first skill isn't learning a better way to correct somebody. It's learning that you don't need to correct them at all. And that is so wise. Second piece is when the correction does matter, correct the information without making the person wrong, evil, bad. Because sometimes we have a tendency to do that, right? There's a huge difference between you're wrong and I have something different. At work, somebody says, the numbers came in at 42% and you have 47%. Instead of saying, actually, that's wrong, say this instead. Wow, I have a different number. Let's compare what we have. Emotional intelligence in action. Notice what happened there. You still corrected the information. You didn't make yourself smaller. You didn't pretend the number was right. You simply moved the conversation toward figuring out the discrepancy instead of figuring out who made the mistake. And that is blame, shame, energy. We want to raise our awareness so we're not blaming and shaming. So instead of saying, actually, that's not what happened, say, I remember that differently. That sentence is particularly important and impactful, especially in families, because sometimes we think we're correcting a fact when we're actually correcting somebody's experience. One sibling remembers childhood one way, right? Another remembers something else. A parent remembers doing everything possible to support their kids. The adult remembers feeling unsupported. Doesn't mean that anyone is wrong. It just remembers that's how we created the memories. Doesn't mean that you have to say, yes, you're right. Doesn't mean any of that. Our instinct can be, that's not what happened. Be careful with that sentence. Be mindful. Careful is not the right word. Be mindful with that sentence, because what we actually mean is, that's not what I experienced. Those are two completely different things. Two people can be in the same family and have outrageously different experiences. I know me and my sister did. Very different experiences. Our parents are different when they raise us. I'm a year and a half younger than my sister. My parents were different at a year and a half different, right? You're following my logic. Okay. Another good one to say is, in your family system, when they say a memory that you don't align with, that's not how I remember it. Tell me how you remember it. Powerful. You're not erasing your experiences. This is especially important with adult children, because for years, part of our jobs as parents was correcting our kids. Don't touch that. Look both ways. The answer is wrong. You need to apologize. Your homework needs to be fixed. Then they grow up. And sometimes we keep correcting them as though it's still our job. And it's not. Grown adult parents of grown adult children need to learn how to accommodate their children growing up. It's a really difficult task for older people like me. Remember, I'm 62. Your grown daughter tells you about something that happened at work, and before she finishes, you're telling her she should have done something differently. Your son tells you about a decision he's making, and you immediately explain what he hasn't considered. No. Yesterday, my daughter is in the midst of moving to a new house. Her husband backed into the house and caused $3,500 worth of damage to the brick. Okay, this is not funny. It's just comical and tragic. It really is, because now they got to fix the brick. $3,500 later. I had the granddaughters, they're 4 and 9, both Saturday and Sunday. And Sunday, I'm getting ready to take them back, and lo and behold, Brielle, who's 9, has frickin' lice. Okay, I'm not kidding you. Okay, a lice little thing pops off of her. We find the lice. So now the next drama is to go to the Walmart, get the lice. We all had to shampoo our heads. We had to wash clothes. We had to wash blankets in the middle of moving, okay? And my daughter, she's standing at the steps, and her eyes are filled with tears. She goes, oh, Mama. She calls me Mama, which I love. Oh, Mama. Oh, I am so distressed. There was nothing for me to fix, nothing for me to tell her to do, nothing to correct. I just said, oh, honey, I know this is so hard. And she wept beautifully. Take a deep breath. When you grieve stuff that's going on in the moment, then you can do the next right step. My job as Mama is just to have her feel seen and heard, not to correct her, not to give her advice. You're understanding my logic here, right? Yeah. Your adult children don't need correction. They really don't. And if you're the child being corrected, I'm sorry that your parents haven't learned that yet. And you can train them too, okay? The third piece is to pay attention what happens after you correct. Pay attention, because the gold is there. You're seeing exactly what's going on. And be willing to repair when you make a correction that was unwarranted, unneeded, and unnecessary. You correct a coworker and suddenly they stop contributing in the meetings. That's real. People lose their voice when you constantly correct people. You correct an employee and their shoulders drop. Start noticing that, man. You correct your spouse, your partner, and they go quiet. You correct your daughter and she says, never mind. Those are all clues. You correct your mother and she immediately starts defending herself. This is information, and we miss it when we're still explaining why we're right. This is where I want you to stop defending the correction and pay attention to the human being sitting right in front of you. So instead of communicating, no, listen, this is what you want to say too. That came out more sharply than I intended. That sentence changes the conversation. When you start noticing your corrections are not working, at work you might say, this is a Post-it note moment, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I want to make sure we're working from the same information. My apologies. At home you might say, I don't want us arguing about something this small. Good stuff to say. Or simply saying something like this when you notice someone got defensive. I'm not trying to prove you wrong. I just remember it differently. That's repair. And repair doesn't mean you've done something terrible. It means you notice what your communication created and you adjusted. Yay. I think we sometimes believe good communication always says exactly the right thing the first time. Never. It rarely is the first time, right? It's an iterative process. It's a building and a co-creation in the moment. Good communicators notice what happens next. We notice when somebody's face changes. We notice when somebody stops listening. We notice when our own tone gets sharp. We notice when a disagreement over a fact starts becoming a disagreement about the relationship. And then we adjust. This matters enormously at work because power changes. How a correction lands. If you're the boss and you correct somebody publicly, ooh, good, but that correction can carry considerably more weight than you realize. And you may forget about it 10 minutes later. The person you corrected will be thinking about it for the rest of the day, if not the rest of the week. Seriously. It matters at home because history changes how a correction lands. Your spouse may hear something in your tone that reminds them of 50 other conversations, even ones from 30 years ago, if you've been married 30 years like me, okay? Your adult child may hear the parent who corrected them throughout childhood rather than the person that you believe you're being today. None of this means we stop correcting people. It doesn't mean that. Accuracy matters, truth matters, accountability matters. There are absolutely times when something needs to be challenged. So the next time you feel actually coming, remember these three things. First of all, should you say nothing? Because many times that's the case if it's a minuscule, non-important detail, right? Second is when the information does need to be corrected, you're not going to say you're wrong. You're going to say, I have something different. Let's compare what we have. Exquisiteness. And third, if you see that what you corrected lands harsh, you can do a repair immediately and say, that came out more sharply than I intended. Sorry about that. That keeps the conversation moving, right? Right? That's what I got today. I'm cheering you on. Mwah. Bye.